Good evening. It's humbling and a little, more than a little intimidating to be in this assemblage of patriots, brave souls. But I'm here because it's my great honor tonight to help honor my friend and mentor, a great journalist, Tom Brokaw. For 50 years, from his days as a local correspondent in Atlanta and Los Angeles, to his extraordinary 21 years as managing editor and anchor of NBC Nightly News, Tom Brokaw was the gold standard of journalists. Brilliant, dedicated, and passionate about informing and educating our audiences, whether covering presidential campaigns, wars, or in the worst day in our recent history, the horrific events of 9/11. Tom is also a student of history and the author of 9 best-selling books, the title of one of which coined a phrase that is now part of the American vernacular, the greatest generation. Let me give you some examples of Tom's special, intuitive understanding of the significance of the events that he witnessed. I was among the NBC correspondents at Normandy on June 6, 1984, covering one of President Reagan's greatest speeches. But it was Tom, so deeply moved by the president's poetic evocation of the brave Rangers taking those cliffs 40 years earlier, who saw it as a metaphor for the grit and the determination and the patriotism of an entire generation. Not only those who fought the battles overseas, but also the men and the women who supported them at home. That is the genius of Tom Brokaw. After covering the civil rights movement in the South and Watergate as a White House correspondent, it was the Cold War that then shaped some of Tom's most memorable reporting. He conducted the first television interview with the new Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, a Soviet leader decades younger than his predecessors, and the first truly open to a dialogue with the West. Tom immersed himself in the Reagan-Gorbachev summits, and by 1989, he sensed a possible crack in the Iron Curtain. So Tom, alone among network anchors, where many correspondents, went to East Berlin to find out what was really happening. And he interviewed a lot of people. And during an interview with a communist government official, the East German official said something to the effect that people would begin to pass freely through the forbidden checkpoints of the Berlin Wall. That is why on November 9th, 1989, Tom was the only network anchor standing in front of the Brandenburg Gate, as immediately behind him, viewers here and around the world could see jubilant East Germans climbing over the wall, popping bottles of champagne, and wielding axes to hack away at its cement and mortar. What shaped the character of this extraordinary journalist? I attribute it to his roots in the American heartland, forged by his hard-working and resilient forebears, braving the frontier to settle in the prairies of the Dakotas. As he later wrote in Never Give Up, a prairie family story, one of his books, the lifespan of this unique nation has depended on more than its armies and its navies. It has depended on them and on our shared values prevailing against assaults on common destinies. It is that deeply rooted character that inspired Tom's response when he got a call from the president of NBC News back on that day, on December 8th, 2015. She asked him to write a commentary for that evening's broadcast. This was after a terrorist inspired by ISIS had killed 14 people in San Bernardino, California, sparking a wave of Islamophobia across the nation, including a controversial call for a ban against all Muslims entering the US. When the NBC News executive called that day, Tom was connected to an IV in a New York hospital for 3 hours of chemotherapy. So, without complaint and without questioning her assignment or her request, with his left hand, he wrote an essay for that evening's broadcast. Then he caught an afternoon flight to Washington. Once there, he met a camera crew in Arlington Cemetery to record his thoughts about that moment in our history. Standing in that sacred place, Tom recalled an ugly history when the United States herded Japanese Americans into remote internment camps during World War II, and how black veterans of that war had been treated like second and third-class citizens upon their returns. And then he spoke about Karim Khan, a Muslim American citizen who joined the army after 9/11 to show that not all Muslims were fanatics. He was killed in Iraq in 2007 by an IED. He was only 20 years old. Continuing, Tom said, Karim Khan couldn't be excluded from America. And as the camera zoomed in on a headstone, Tom said, he has a permanent home here in Section 60 at Arlington Cemetery. It was really a breathtaking essay with tremendous impact. Later won several awards, broadcast awards. Well, that night, I watched the broadcast in the studio. I left work to go to the German embassy, where Tom was to receive a medal from the German government for his long career in journalism. The ambassador at the time, Peter Wedig, paid tribute to Tom, recalling many of events in his career, but particularly how important Tom's work was to him personally, because he had been a young German diplomat at the United Nations in 1989. He first learned that his country had been freed from the yoke of communism by watching Tom in front of the Berlin Wall as it came down on that December evening, 24 years earlier. He had watched Tom Brokaw anchor the nightly news as Ronald Reagan's dream was fulfilled, and that hated wall came tumbling down without a shot being fired or a single tank rolling through the streets of Berlin. Tom is a man who understands history, like Arthur Schlesinger Jr. Tom has been its witness and its narrator. For me, Tom is a beloved mentor, a personal hero, and a shining example of the mission that the very best journalism can achieve. He's now fighting a different battle, which is why he could not be with us tonight. But ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud to introduce tonight's winner of the Arthur Schlesinger Jr. Award, Tom Brokaw. And as I say, unfortunately, he can't be with us, but although he can't accept it in person, we pre-recorded his acceptance speech, and we would like to share it with you right now. Thank you.
It is a great honor for me to add my name to the long roll of men and women who answered the call and made sacrifices large and small. As more time goes by, we have an ever greater appreciation of the majestic efforts of the greatest generation. In the long history of mankind, there have been many epic examples of resources that were needed to fulfill the effort that we were involved in, the sacrifices, none greater than World War II. I was born in 1940, so my first memories were from an Army base where 24/7 the battle for victory went on. I wore a kid's helmet every day and fought the enemy from the sagebrush of western South Dakota. The base was alive with uniformed troops, young men graduating from high school one day and enlisting the next. While we may not have wanted this fight, once engaged, we were not going to lose it. Our enemies underestimated America. They would soon learn that America was the world's arsenal of democracy in every sense of that phrase. They incorrectly viewed our racial, ethnic, and religious diversity as a weakness of some kind. But the truth was, the opposite was true. We're a richly diverse nation. It is one of our nation's greatest strengths. We are unencumbered by tradition. We take risks. We're eager to innovate. One of the World War II's greatest innovations was the Office of Strategic Service, or OSS as it was known as. It was founded by the legendary General William Wild Bill Donovan. It was the first effort by the United States to create a centralized system of strategic intelligence. Donovan recruited Americans from all walks of life. He frequently told OSS personnel they could not succeed without taking chances. They took his admonition to heart and undertook the most dangerous missions of World War II. Many sacrificed their lives, performing what Donovan said were some of the bravest acts of the war. The irrepressible men and women of OSS, Donovan's colorful and glorious amateurs, as he called them, personified its generation and its founders. The infectious can-do spirit. An OSS captain said that after spending a half an hour with Donovan, he was convinced he could do the impossible. Donovan gave great deal of credit to its analytical efforts, saying that much of OSS's success was the result of good old-fashioned intellectual sweat. It provided our nation's civilian and military leaders with the intelligence they needed to make the best decisions. Its greatest contribution to American national security was expressed by General Donovan in his 1945 farewell address to OSS. He said OSS had shown the people of America and the world that only by decisions of national policy based upon accurate information can we have the chance of a peace that will endure.